Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of ideological crimes or thought crimes. Now, I've touched on this subject before, but I was just recently talking to a sitting judge in a superior court who we know, and he, without mentioning any specific case or anything at all, he mentioned that ideological crimes are now, things like alleged rape and crimes against minorities, but ideological crimes, where there's no actual crime has taken place. It's an ideological interpretation of social power relations between, between a minority person, or on the relative basis of social power. The straight white Christian male has a social power, therefore what he does is criminal. If it was the reverse, then it wouldn't be criminal. So very ideological, and also included in this, of course, is thought crimes. So you posted a meme on social media and your intention was to be a Nazi. That was your intention. Now, how they know this, of course, is quite another matter. You intended to be evil. So we know how to climb inside the inner recesses of your brain, even though no crime was committed. That we can ascribe to you motive. And once we ascribe motive, we can then say you're criminal, and then we can place the entire burden of proof on you. So we can say you're Hitler, and you have to prove you're not. And the burden of proof is very, very high that you have to meet. Whereas the burden of proof we need to meet by accusing you of being Hitler, that burden of proof is very, very low. We effectively have no burden of proof, but you have the entire bit. And so this is so ideological crimes and so on. Now the burden of proof thing can be brought in at the point of prosecutions. So the prosecutor, an activist prosecutor, can bring charges. Let's suppose it's a case where a girl who was 14 years old at the time, she's now, say, in her late 50s or 60s. So we're talking 40, 50 years ago, something like that. And she decides that she wants to bring charges against somebody, a man, and he's now in his 80s. He's had multiple strokes. He's in a wheelchair. He can barely speak. And the prosecutors decided to go after the case. So yep, let's prosecute this. Why are we going to prosecute a guy in a wheelchair that's paralyzed from strokes? How is there going to be any physical evidence from 50 years ago? There will be none. It's going to be pure, he said, she said stuff from 50 years ago. And how are we going to handle it? I mean, would any prosecutor take? Well, they do take it, because this is an issue of social power relations. Evil straight white man and oppressed woman. This is to do with social power. It's ideology. Don't you understand that, you damn fucking Hitler Nazi? So cases are being brought to court purely for ideological reasons. Now, just consider this. You're a prosecutor. So you're only concerned with the taxpayer money. Is the case winnable? Is there a case? Is there a case to be here? So someone comes in and says, 50 years ago, and this is just, I'm talking about one particular case. 50 years ago, the guy, I was out at a friend's place and we were in the swimming pool, and we were staying overnight, a whole bunch of girls. We're staying overnight at this friend's place. And the guy, the father of the friend who owned the house and the swimming pool, he was drying us off and with a towel, and the way he dried my back and my ass had sexual overtones to it. Well, did he try and have intimate relations with you? Did he try and digitally enter you or something? Did he grab your tits or something? It was just the way he dried my back and the way when he dried my ass with the towel. They've got a swimming costume on, by the way. And so, and they had some big bathroom where they were showering afterwards, and the the father came in and said, "Oh, is everyone okay? Do you need more towels?" But really he was doing it because he wanted to look at our 14-year-old tits or something, that type of thing. So now someone comes to you with a case like that from 50 years ago, I mean, would you prosecute something like that? Well, what evidence do you have? You don't have, do any of the other girls come forward or something? Is there, particularly given there's no actual crime here. So the guy looked at you, you argue that he looked at you and that he dried your back with a towel, and that you felt that there may be sort of sexual overtones to the way he did. I mean, would you even take something like that to court? Now, if me as the prosecutor, I would say no, because there can be no physical evidence. Then there aren't multiple witnesses coming forward. Apparently, after a bit of pressure, her best girlfriend came forward, but only because this guy's quite wealthy and maybe they'll get a payout of some sort. So anyway, I would think it's an unwinnable case, but also it's a case without merit. Why did you wait 50 years? I don't know. But if you're an activist prosecutor looking at social power relations, then this is completely different. This is not just a case where there's merits or crimes. This is social power, and we have to fight so it's ideologically, it's a screaming case ideologically, not criminally, or not as in has a law been broken, but ideologically and we'll get a precedent on this. We get a precedent that any man can be banged up in prison from 50 years ago from something that he may have done. And because the burden of proof is totally on him, he can't disprove it. It's from 50 years ago. What evidence can he possibly put together? He can say, well, no, I didn't do that, or that's not true, but that's it. Now, the evidence saying that he did do it equally is uncompelling. Well, I say he did do it, says the now 60-year-old woman. So again, very ideological, and that there was no criminal act. But ideologically, social power, sure. And so activist prosecutors and activist judges will come into this. Now, this judge and other judges, by the way, have spoken and mentioned in the public domain that there was a time when they used to have cases where the court cases, but where they would be dealing with sort of robbery and and murder and arson and attempted murder, and so on and so forth. And those are the cases they have, but no more. Increasingly, the real crimes are being dealt with as part of a plea deal. So if you're a Black Lives Matter activist that burns down a public building, it'll be a plea deal. You do a few hundred hours of community service, you're good to go. So these plea deals, again, ideologically motivated, of course. Well, you're a black person burning down a building, so you're a social victim. You did this only because you have no social power. We don't really want to, ideologically, we don't really want to punish you, not in the globalist controlled sort of legal system of today. So we'll just give you community service, maybe a bit of weekend detention or something, like we don't want to give you a hard time. Take this plea deal and you'll walk. And you notice this in the BLM riots, well, particularly in the United States, but also climate change rioting and activism. And there's very, very lenient plea deal type sentences are being given. The very few that do go to court, and there are only a very few, then they tend to routinely get activist judges that treat them very leniently. Even people who've been on good behavior multiple times on good behavior. There was recently one, I think it was in the UK, where this woman had, or youngish woman, she'd been in her early 20s, early mid-20s, I suppose. She'd been dragged into court multiple times and just got another good behaviour bond each time. There was no penalty. Finally, she got something, I think, like 3 months prison. And this was going, oh, this is terrible. All she's trying to do is save the world through climate. And no. She's broken the law multiple times and broken the good behaviour bond and breached it and so on. So, and then even after all this, she only gets 3 months in prison, which turns out to be 2 months with good behaviour or something. So that's all it was. So this is hardly a serious punishment. So the real crimes, the shootings, the murders, black people shooting each other in the street, this type of stuff, that's all getting dealt with at a plea deal level. And plea deals, very onerous plea deals are being offered to people from ideological crimes. So say someone's supposed to be in Washington, D.C. during January 6th, even if they didn't even enter the, any public buildings, they'll still be pursued and chased after, and they'll be said, well, you contributed to the insurrection, Nazis, Hitler. So, and they get an option of say, look, we'll give you 12 months in prison if you take the plea. 12 months for just being in the general vicinity and not committing any crime. Well, you did actually commit a crime because you disagree with the election we rigged, and we rigged the crap out of the election. If you disagree with that or question it, then hey, you should go to prison. And so again, we're looking at the ideological crime. Now, there was a bit like the divorce courts where, that are stacked with activists, radical activists, screaming lesbian, family-hating, men-hating activists all through the place. But that's a boutique court that's specific to divorce and supposedly child's issues, but they're not. They're just radical leftist, globalist activists. And the view was sort of 25, 30 years ago that specialist boutique courts would be created. In fact, they still agitate for it now. Specialist boutique courts would be set up to handle things like, say, rape or domestic violence and all these sorts of things. So, and this is again, these were courts not of law breaking, but of social power dealing. Ideological social power was the issue, to create specialist courts to deal with, as the activists perceive it, imbalances in social power. And if there's an imbalance in social power, which they would always presume to be that the straight white guy has a social power, then he must be held to a very high level of accountability, whereas the other party that supposedly has less social power can only be held to a much, much lower level of accountability. So, and you see this in the divorce courts, the woman kills the guy's dog, and that's who cares, irrelevant, move on, next question. But if the guy the man that does something like burns the toast, you fucking Nazi. So very, very different levels of interpret. Every act is seen within the wider context of ideological social power, and pursued and prosecuted along those lines as well. So the idea was to create these boutique courts, and it didn't really take off. It did in some specialist children's courts, and so there are a few of them around, but it didn't go as far as the activists really wanted. Now, when they want to create a boutique court, what they mean by this when they say, specialists, experts, what they really mean is radical, hysterical activists that their sole purpose being there is to punish straight white men, to really stick it up them. And they view this in their ideological insanity. They view this as somehow some social power justice, form of justice. It's insane, but they're often getting their own way. Again, the divorce courts are a classic example of that. But it didn't go as far as they wanted. So what we found, or what we can see today, is that what would have been these proliferation of boutique courts, what that is, how that's played out in the end, is that these ideological cases, they're pursuing ideological cases now with an absolute vengeance all across the Western world, and all of it directed against straight white males, by the way. But instead of this being going into specialist boutique courts, it's now being put into the mainstream court system, a legal system, litigation system, so that now judges that used to deal with murders and serious crimes are now having to cases that prosecutors are bringing, like upskirting. Now, I didn't even know that something, I never even heard someone else existed until a few years ago. Upskirting, who does that? And it's kind of pretty perverse to think that grown men, allegedly at least, are trying to create situations where they look up women's skirts. Would you really do that? Does anybody do that? Seems odd to me. But anyway, but that's now a crime that a court can hear, where the verdict can be imprisonment. So I don't know how the upskirting works exactly, but I mean, how short would the dress have to be before you can upskirt somebody? Anyway, but apparently people go around photographing up women's skirts. I mean, again, do people actually do that? And these are cases that are brought. So women say, that guy over there upskirted me. He looked up my skirt. Oh, yeah, well, we'll arrest that motherfucker. Oh, got to get that criminal off the streets. What about that murderer over there? Nah, don't worry about him. It's the upskirter we want. And that seems very strange to me. But there are crimes. There's another recent crime that's been invented, which is called stealthing. And what does stealth mean? As in STEALTH. What does stealthing mean? Well, apparently this is like a new ideological criminal invention, or where apparently if the man and the woman are having consensual sexual relations, and he's wearing a condom, but if he takes the condom off this is during the sexual act, if he takes the condom off but doesn't tell the woman that he's taking the condom off, then he's done it by stealth because she didn't know or she didn't notice him doing it. And then they continue intimate relations, but without the condom being there or in place. And this is called stealthing. I don't know how you could actually do that. How could you, I mean, I'm speaking from my own sort of, how could you actually remove the condom without the other person knowing? I mean, I suppose if it was, pitch black, maybe the lights were, I don't know. How would you get the condom on in the dark? Yeah. So a whole lot of logistical things to consider there, I guess, but this is a new one. And this is being touted by a regional government. We're fighting back against evil Nazis and protecting these downtrodden women. Like, is that what it is? Again, ideological hysteria and nonsense. But this is what courts are overwhelmed with. Now, I had a friend recently had a matter that potentially could have gone to the children's court. I'm not exactly sure what it was. He did mention a few things, but it was explained to him by the prosecutors that he should do this through the children's, because he had an option. He had to agree to it in some way. He had to agree to it going to a children's court or going to a proper court. And the prosecuting department said, well, look, the children's, explained to him that the children's court was, they're all specialists, experts, absolute specialists. And they know, these people know, and they're you'll get a much better verdict there. But if you go to the main court where they're not experts, anything could happen. Hitler could come along with it. So he assumed this was well-meant advice that was accurate and sensible and reasonable, and so he mentioned it to me. And I said to him, under no circumstances do you go to that children's school. Do not do it. But aren't they experts? No. They're activists. This is an interception point, a point of interception where they can get straight white Christian males and get them and stick it up. And the burden of proof will be overwhelming on one side and will be non-existent on the other. You'll be walking into a minefield of hysterical ideological activism. Do not go near it. Do not go there. Go to the other court where, as in the main court, where you've got a much more likely scenario where the evidence will matter, whereas in the other court it'll be ideology only will matter. So this is where we're now. We're looking at, again, things from years ago, and just coming on to thought crimes, where from 7, 8, 10 years ago, longer, a post that you made on social media can be dug up, and then you can be prosecuted for the activist law enforcement, activist prosecuted into activist court. You don't have much of a chance here. The plea deal you might be offered will be onerous, not like the Black Lives Matter dudes that burn down buildings where they get a little slap on the wrist. It won't be like that, or the climate change folks. You'll be offered something onerous. If you accept a 5-year prison sentence, we'll go easy on you. and they'll use all sorts of intimidation that they don't use on the again on the Black Lives Matter folks. So we're looking at something here where they can go back 10 years and say you made a post, and not only we can say what thoughts were in your mind and what your intent and purpose was when you made the post. And they can raid your house and they'll magically find swastikas everywhere, the normal stuff. And that'll be brought out in court. Yeah, Your Honor, and he had a million fucking swastikas there, and lots of Hitler busts, and so on. And they can make pretty much once they've got the central allegation in place is that ideologically you are unsound. That is, it's a thought crime. Once they've got that there, then everything else, the swastikas and the whole thing, is just something they throw in to gin it up. So now, from 10 years ago, and if you can even remember what you were thinking, so going 10 years ago, where were you on the night of the 10th? From 10 years ago, fuck, I don't know. That's it. You don't know. Prison for you, motherfucker. And this is the attitude in ideological crimes. The onus is on you to prove that you're not Hitler or you don't own a million swastikas. This sort of thing. So really, the entire legal system is now infected ideologically, and it's the stepping as law. The NGOs and the media, whipping up the frenzy. Then the police or the law enforcement. Then it goes to activist prosecutors. Now, I don't think there's a prosecutor in the Western world at the moment who is not an activist, and this is purposeful. I mean, you deliberately are putting activists in there, the same as you appoint activists to the NGOs and to the Quangos and then to the universities. It's deliberate to appoint these activists into. And I was listening to an American politician that was complaining about a year ago, I suppose, that Donald Trump's judges had not been activists, not been social justice, ideological, fanatical activists, but they were saying that's good for justice because the law and evidence and facts were going to, but instead they argue the opposite end that no, we don't want law and facts and we don't want that. What we want is social justice activism, and that should and must replace facts and evidence and the law. And really, that's the attitude that we're seeing all around the Western world now. And again, it's part of the globalist plan and the shtick to undermine and erode confidence in all Western institutions. And you'd have to say, based on how things are at the moment, the globalists are succeeding. You've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.